What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, a man who walks into every day trying to answer the age-old question, what that mouth do? Brandon Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
Nothing much, Mike. Football Monday, thinking about what mouths do.
That one got you, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Deep.
It did.
Yeah, deeply disturbed, which is what we strive for around here. It's the GoJo Show difference. It's why we ask you to download, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and check us out on YouTube at the DraftKings YouTube channel. Subscribe there. Check out the GoJo of Mike Golick Jr. playlist. We had a great show for you today. We're going to try a little something new around here as we continue to try and give you, the listener, the best possible experience. Coming off the NFL weekend, we got one time for the one time, one quick look at every game from the weekend that we saw. We've also got an update on Scandal in Fat Bear Week, which I'm deeply disturbed by and honestly saddened by in all things. We'll also take a look back at Brandon Newman's spooky Locktober play of the week, the 6 thick picks from the weekend. Do a little bit of eval here. We got to do some self-scout after what was admittedly a pretty difficult weekend on the NFL front, but Brandon, I am also recording this podcast this entire week while trying not to wake up a baby. I'm out in South Bend. We are christening young Jackson, my nephew, godchild, my brother and his wife Jenny's baby boy. And so we're all jammed in one house this weekend. And we have got a little baby who's trying to sleep and a big fat me who is trying to not wake everyone up in the house during the entirety of this.
Mike, that's good to know. I was wondering. I thought everyone was coming in town for Stanford Week. I thought maybe the Gold's were being acknowledged.
You thought we were being honored in the first quarter of Stanford Week, like we were varsity letter winners for the new year.
Or maybe Jackson was. I was like, oh, everybody's in South Bend for the first time. This is going to be a big deal. But I had no idea. The christening.
God, dude, a baby letter jacket would go so hard.
Ooh, I mean, you know, they grow out of those things so fast. That's the issue with a Letterman jacket in that size.
So I was actually having this conversation. How have we not, you know, the way you can have a leaf that'll fold out of a table and make it a larger table in your house? You've got the leafing that'll fold out there. How have we not figured out that, but for children's dress clothes? We were talking about how fun it would be to get Jackson a little like tailored suit that he'd look nice in. Ooh. And then you're like, obviously he would grow out of that. What if it's got little like extendo leaflets in there and there's some sort of ripcord pulley system where you can just start to inch it out in the spaces you need? I feel like, because the one thing I have found out in being now a full-time uncle, I was part-time uncle before to, you know, your kids, a lot of other kids. Now I'm full-time uncling, and the one thing I've realized, especially now being in the house, boots on the ground with my brother and his wife for the first couple of days here, is there's a lot of baby technology. So much.
True.
I mean, it is incredible the things that people have come up with and found out about babies and making their lives a little bit easier and thus making their parents' lives a little bit easier. I feel like baby tech, if we just point them in this direction, is going to find us an answer. The way porn paces the internet, I feel like baby tech paces most of modern life. And so I feel like this is a canon of knowledge that we can just point at this problem and see if it can get solved soon.
Yeah, Mike, but I feel like that's what tailors do, and maybe there's baby tailors that we're putting out of business with this concept. Well, it's obviously all services are finding a need and answering them, but you know. Well,
I feel like if you leave it up to big tailoring, you're right. It's like when you always look at gum, or like the idea of the everlasting gobstopper from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. They want you to buy more candy. What about people that can't afford going to buy more candy? That's where what I will call the all suit is. Maybe we should have it.
The all suit, it's got to have a baby twinge, Mike.
It does have to have a baby twinge. I'm thinking essentially like the Iron Man suit with nanobot tech, but for babies and their suits.
I understand that. I'm saying the name has to have a little bit of a baby twinge to it. The all suit seems too Tony Starky. We gotta get like a little baby bum. I don't know. What's a suit? Super. I don't know. And it's also have to be. It's got to be got some Teflon on it, or Scotch Guard, 3M, whatever stuff that like bounces off so things don't stick on.
Oh yeah, no, some sort of like stain defend, like the stain defender you put on something. Yes, so baby Twitter, if you're listening right now, or large baby tech, if you've got the wires tapped on this, let's start to figure this out, because baby clothes are so cute. Buying them is awesome, but very quickly, I know I am now like stumbling into baby stuff for the first time in earnest, and I'm sure parents are rolling their eyes like, yeah, we fucking know, dude, and you included, but I'm just trying to offer this up here and see if we can weaponize the right people against these problems.
I was going to say, about 3 years into this game, baby tech and NFL rule officiating tech often go hand in hand. They're the leading innovation.
Well, it depends on which part of rules, and that's a perfect segue into what we've got going on from the NFL weekend, because I love nothing more than realizing as we will start. So how we're going to try and do this today is one time for the one time, one or probably two quick thoughts about every game from the NFL weekend. Starting with Sunday Night Football and working back, in this case this weekend, towards the London game. But as we look, Brandon, at Sunday Night Football, where a game where we saw a field goal go directly over one of the upright poles for the Cincinnati Bengals when they took a lead at the end of that game. And we all learned that above and to the inside apparently is good in this world. It's a reminder that I had no idea. I had no idea.
I hate learning new things every freaking week with the football season. I hate it.
But this is what happens when, especially for the NFL, a multi-billion-dollar industry that prides itself on precision, all of this information, you've got player tracking and all this stuff that goes on. We still, when it comes to measuring the down and distance, figuring out who scored a touchdown, and in this case, figuring out if field goals are good, we operate on a vibes-based economy. It is strictly going out there and going, I guess this kind of seems right. Let's pull out an index card and see if this works potentially. I don't know,
Mike, and I know we'll get to it, but Tom Brady strikes again. I was on his side last week. He did the thing where the football leaned towards him and the bounce ball bounced his way, and I'm back to F Tom Brady.
You know what, Brandon? You need to operate this and go about this the same way the NFL goes about measuring these things. Let go and let God. They have clearly become comfortable with it. You need to become comfortable too. All right, Brandon, with that being said, it's time to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And again, we always appreciate feedback on this. We're trying this stuff out. We got 5 days a week to tool with. So if you don't like the way this one sounds, you're going to get 4 more this week. If you do enjoy this format, hell, let us know at GoJo Show on Twitter, or download, subscribe, rate, and review, and leave us that review. And let us know if this is something that you might like more of going forward. We're going to try this out because why not? We got the time. All right, Brandon, one time for the one time. Try and a concise thought or two on each game that we saw from this NFL weekend.
Let's do it.
All right, let's start. Ravens 19, Bengals 17. The Sunday Night Football win for your Baltimore Ravens. Brandon, I would say this. So much focus is going to be on fourth down decision making. John Harbaugh had a chance up in this Ravens win down on the 1 yard line of the Cincinnati Bengals to go for it on 4th and 1 with Lamar Jackson. They go up there. And in a game where we saw a failed fourth down attempt for them earlier on in the game, where Lamar Jackson had a wide open throw, I believe, to Devin Duvernay down the field off a really cool play design where they had gone and faked that tight end under center with Mark Andrews, where we had seen plenty of teams have the tight end go under center, take the snap, and sneak it, being a bigger body. They faked that, had him motion out, and then Lamar Jackson rolled out and had a wide open throw that he just airmailed. But we had that as the lead up to this other fourth down call. And the Ravens, a team with a robust analytics department, Ravens, a team with a very aggressive head coach who we talked about with Lamar Jackson, always seemed to push. We saw Lamar Jackson in this game on that 4th and 1. Shushing off Justin Tucker and the special teams on the side saying, I got this. For them not to go for it in that situation was surprising because it ends up putting them up 16-10 at that point, which in blackjack terms, a lot of you guys that play like me know, just enough to lose by 1. Now you've got a Cincinnati team that knows they have to go score 7. You incentivize them to go and be more aggressive, which they were. Now, they end up scoring with 2 minutes left and giving Baltimore time, but to me, while that is going to be discourse for today, because man, as sports media, we love, fourth down discourse and stuff like that. I'm surprised they weren't more aggressive there. I thought they should have gone for it there because again, if you miss, now you got them backed up at the 1. Now you give them a long field to go instead of resetting the chains on the kickoff. The more frustrating part to me, Brandon, was this Ravens defense. We focused so much on the pass defense for the first few weeks of the season here. That rush defense, non-compete last night. A Cincinnati Bengals team that walked into this one 30th in yards per rush on the season. I think averaging like 3.3 yards per carry, averaged just under 5 in this game. They were getting whatever they wanted on the ground. They didn't have to vary formation to do it. It was an offensive line that had struggled this season that went out there and managed to get pretty much whatever they want, including on that penultimate drive from Cincinnati where they ended up taking the lead.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Ravens defense is they're well coached, but they overcorrect from the previous week a lot. But I'd rather take these chunk plays on the ground than in the air anytime.
Yeah, I get that that's modern football, and you're right. The Ravens lightened up the box. They had 6 guys in the box. They did a good job of showing that on Sunday Night Football, and they were basically saying this is where we're going to declare resources. But Brandon, is that your one thought for the game? Do you have one thought for the game?
Oh, I apologize. We were talking a lot about the game. My one thought of the game is Lamar Jackson, no question, top 3 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, he for all the talk about the missed throws in the middle, definitely came up big down the end. This was a throwback Lamar game, too. He ended up being the leading rusher for Baltimore in this game. So much of the season had been about him under center, downfield passing game. This game, a lot more pistol stuff, a lot more Lamar Jackson in the gun.
Between the tackles.
Yeah, it was him getting down and dirty. I think Mina Kimes said on Twitter that when the Ravens get into key situations, they smash the Lamar Jackson run or pass to Mark Andrews button, and we saw that a lot. So this one felt different than the ones we had seen, and they were without Rashad Bateman in this game too, so that could be part of the reason why, but definitely saw a little bit more of that from Baltimore. So everybody enjoy the celebration that is fourth down decision making and celebrating our king Justin Tucker for going out and being a human weapon again at field goal. They let him talk after the game about the field goal process. It was Mike. Brandon, it's incredible, the attention to detail, and I'm sure it exists for a lot of kickers, but it's passion combined with an attention to detail that is the exact thing I want to see and hear from specialists who spend all their time down on the third field in practice while we are out shortening our necks in 9-on-7 over on the other field doing real football drills. I understand at times I would have a few words for our kickers when they would come over and miss field goals that would get us out of running at practice. If this is the result on the other end, you got the GOAT kicker. I want Justin Tucker to go out there and celebrate, stunt, do whatever he wants. He's earned it. He's the best doing it. Probably the best to ever do it. But this is what I want to hear from my specialist, to know over on that third field, this is the kind of laser-like precision and focus you are applying to your craft while I am overhurting myself.
And shout out to the Ravens holder who had his first game-winning hold. Like that analysis from Justin Tucker about the battery. I love talking about the battery, the snapper, kick, and the holder. And he talked about, like you said, broke down that 1.3 seconds that the ball goes from the holder or the snapper to Justin Tucker's foot. Like you said, it self-kicks after that. You just got to get that stuff right.
Called himself a system kicker. Yes, I want game-winning holds listed in the media guide now for our holders. So let it be written, so let it be done. Brandon, Eagles 20, Cardinals 17. This one, to me, the biggest thought was this flashed my biggest concern for the Eagles during this game, which is really less anything production-wise and more the ever-present threat of injury up front. Jason Kelce and Landon Dickerson, both on the offensive line, left the game at various points with injury. And Jason Kelce's not a guy that's going to go off the field for anything minor. They both end up coming back, and so it's all's well that ends well. Jordan Mailata, their left tackle's already dealt with the shoulder injury after last game, diving for a ball and injuring that there. And it's just a reminder that this is the one thing, and I was talking to my dad about this the other day. I think he might have mentioned this on Golic and Smetty. Like, for this team, they're built like a battering ram. I saw Jason Kelsey joke on Twitter, they might have set a record for 4th and 1 QB sneaks in a game. They are your favorite analytics Twitter, film Twitter, get 1 yard by the easiest format, which is your big quarterback behind your big offensive line, bullying their way to it. That's how this team's going to build blunt force trauma the entire season, but they've got to be able to weather it up front. And I have plenty of trust and faith in those guys, but a lot of the guys up front are people that have injury in their background, and we know that can at times be predictive. And so I just hope that this was a scare and then you can get through this, because other than that, it was, I think, the usual of what we've seen, especially on the Cardinals side, which is chaotic and hard to predict. The Eagles didn't do as good a job on 1st and 2nd down and let Vance Joseph get into some of those weird 3rd down exotics that we see from the personnel they've got over there on the Cardinals. But overall, the score was, I think, closer than a lot of people expected. But at the same time, to me, this is more just about the Eagles having to shuffle personnel up front a bunch during this game.
Yeah, I mean, they still have never trailed in the second half. I do think that Jalen Hurts is the most effective dual threat quarterback in the NFL right now because his team is winning.
Yeah, he both his touchdowns came on the ground in this game. It's kind of he's whatever you need from me in this situation. That's kind of how they've operated with a lot of this. So The other wild part of this, shout out to the broadcast crew, the Fox broadcast. I forget who it was on there. Matt Amendola was the kicker in this game. They had an injury with their starting kicker, and they went back before the final kick that had a chance to tie this game and showed. The Cardinals did. They went back to show in pregame warmups footage of Matt Amendola out there struggling from the same hash that he ended up trying to kick the game-tying attempt on, pushing it wide right, and rolled all that out here as Matt Amendola proceeded to push the kick wide right. It was exemplary television and a great job by them. So not a ton of concern for the Eagles. This Cardinals team, I just way too up and down. They're as boom or bust as any team in the NFL, with both being as good and bad as possible. Cowboys 22, Rams 10. Copy paste the analysis from the Rams Monday Night Football loss to the 49ers about what ails this team. Lack of a true number 2 wide receiver, like we talked about. Cooper Kupp went out and balled yet again. I mean, that image of him catching a route over the middle and just running away from Jalen Ramsey in the end of that defense, I simply was unaware he had that gear.
And balled out in a way that we never have seen him before. He's got his career longest reception, 75-yard touchdown that he had on Sunday. So it's cool to see Cooper Kupp do new things too.
It is. Cooper Rush, the other Cooper in this game, moves to 5-0 as a starter in his career and does it, I believe, with all of 10 pass attempts in this game, Brandon.
102 yards.
It's just incredible. This is, big showing up late to the group project energy, but again, this is all the things, and the analysis is pretty consistent for both these teams. This Cowboys defense might be the deadliest weapon in the NFL, and right now, the healthiest. We saw a little bit of a worry for DeMarcus Lawrence, I think, injury-wise in that game, but Micah Parsons also got a little banged up in that game. I think it was a groin. So them staying healthy is important, because we saw elsewhere Nick Bosa left the 49ers game with injury at the end, was sitting on the sideline there. Joey Bosa out for the Chargers at this point in time. Plenty of other places already dealing with cracks in the armor on that side of the ball. As long as this Cowboys unit's healthy, feels like the deadliest weapon in football. And if you were to ask me between, the NFC East teams that we see below the Eagles right now, who do you trust more coming off this weekend, the Cowboys or the Giants? I would probably right now err on the Cowboys, just because, one, they've shown so much resilience without their starting quarterback in there, which is something that the Giants have dealt with in a limited sample size, Tyrod Taylor having to go in for Daniel Jones 2 games ago. But their defense is the single best unit on either of those two teams. And I understand the Giants' rushing attack, very highly ranked, one of the best in the NFL right now. But I just think what the Cowboys' defense poses as a threat schematically, and with the player they have stirring the drink in Micah Parsons, is the superior unit and all that. And so I'll bank on that, knowing the Cowboys are going to get Dak Prescott back as well.
Yeah, Mike, but I think that getting Dak Prescott back part is what gives me pause with the Cowboys.
I don't buy into that. What I do worry about, the thing I worry about is your offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, going back and doing too much of the other stuff right now. If you put Dak Prescott into what they've been doing with Cooper Rush, you're just going to get a better version of what's been happening. You're going to get a more competent version and reliable version from the quarterback spot. You just need to mix in doing the everything else. Like, I'm sure Cowboys fans were losing their shit seeing Tony Pollard bust that 57-yard run. It is everything about this experience, especially in the running back group for a franchise and their fan base that are focused on this running back situation, is everything Cowboys fans have been yelling about. You had Ezekiel Elliott with 22 carries for 78 yards, Tony Pollard 8 carries for 86 yards. Efficiency monster and that one big long run built in, which is everything Cowboys fans tell you about. They also, on the broadcast, pointed out what I've heard Marshall Newhouse, friend of the program and former NFL O-lineman, and others point out, which is Tony Pollard's a liability in pass protection still right now. And Ezekiel Elliott is much more reliable in that facet. And we saw Tony Pollard, part of a play where Cooper Rush got his ass walloped off a secondary pressure that came through, that the running back appeared to just miss. I always couch it as appeared to because we never know fully someone's protection plan. We can only eyeball it as best we believe. But Greg Olson's played a lot of football, who was on that broadcast. And so I'd imagine he's got a pretty fair idea of what's going on in the protection plans that he's watching out there. So all of that played out. They're going to be better when Dak Prescott comes around, provided this coaching staff approaches this the same way, because they do have a really balanced, and to your point, now a team that's getting back more of its weapons, which is to me another feather in the cap for the Cowboys-Giants debate that we can have if people want, because this Giants team managed to overcome, and both of these teams deserve brownie points for resilience. The Giants will get to dealing with injury going over to London, but this Cowboys team starting to get whole, especially at the receiver spot with CeeDee Lamb and company there. Michael Gallup getting healthy as well as a big part of this.
Well, I just think it's very interesting now because we're getting into the Sunday night football, the prime time NFC East competitions were used to be things that, you figure out you can watch your Game of Thrones at that point in time and catch up on the game later. But now the NFC least is the NFC BEast. And I don't know about Dak Prescott against a rusty Dak Prescott against that Eagles defense, Mike. Secondary and up front.
Yeah, we don't know. Like I think the latest we heard was Dak was still working on getting strength back in his hand. I don't know if that'll be the game that they trot him out. Jerry Jones, if you're going to see him more as master of puppets and someone concerned with television, man, what a setting to do that. And if you want to talk about the eyes of the world on you, and I guess at this point the plan sounds like to have Dak Prescott potentially back in that game, but we'll see. That would be the most Jerry Jones pro wrestling move possible, to trot him out for that game and have that be the case. Brandon, 49ers 37, Panthers 15. My only real takeaway from this game, because the result wasn't surprising, it's a wrap for Baker Mayfield and for Matt Rule. I don't know when, and for Baker Mayfield, we've talked about this before, whenever you get why am I blanking on the other quarterback's name? Sam Darnold. Whenever he's back and healthy from the injury he sustained in the preseason, I'd imagine if you're Matt Rule, self-preservation wise, you're going to want to throw him out there just to see if you can get something to happen for your job. It's not to totally blame Baker. He just doesn't look good. Like it doesn't look like it's there. Whatever he had before the injury that we thought we might get back just hasn't showed up consistently in enough spots there. And he's not talented enough physically. For so many of these other quarterbacks, you'll give him a pass on trying to flirt with the incredible talent that you might get either arm or leg-wise. Baker's not got none of that. His superpower was supposed to be accuracy. It was supposed to be fiery competitor, and none of that showing up in a way that really moves the needle on offense right now as this young offensive line tries to come together. So I don't see much happening for Baker Mayfield beyond this season, and Matt Rule, there's just not anything there for him with this team. And we always said he was going to be a candidate to be the first NFL head coach fired during the season. It seems like that trend is holding true. Again, the Joey Bosa injury in that game was definitely concerning, because when you talk about point of the spear type players in that group, Fred Warner at linebacker certainly in that category. And my God, he was an absolute fiend during this game. The matchup with him and Christian McCaffrey in certain spots, he just is a seek and destroy missile. But Nick Bosa up front having a guy that can affect the game like that on the edges is just irreplaceable. So certainly hope that that's not something long term. Brandon, Texans 13, Jaguars 6.
Man, that should have been my lock, Mike. That should have been my lock. Going into that game, the fact that the Texans were the only team without a win, you just knew they were going to get that win against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I don't feel like I knew that, though, Brandon. This Jacksonville team had suffered a setback against the Philadelphia Eagles the week before. And I get people are going to want to lump in the turnovers from this game by Trevor Lawrence to the turnovers from that game by Trevor Lawrence. And I think you'd be, I can understand if you would do that. I don't necessarily want to make that leap. The field conditions were a lot different in the Philadelphia game, and I think the quality of team was a lot better there. And that's no disrespect to what Lovey's teams put on display on defense. But, man, I don't know. That was just one where the Jags offense, outside of a very limited shot, really didn't seem interested in trying to push the ball downfield. Trevor Lawrence, for the second week in a row, at least looked human again, came back down to earth a little bit. I'm not fully panicked there yet. I think the AFC South as a whole is just proving itself to be really mid, the way the NFC East right now has risen to the top. The AFC South, after we initially got excited about maybe the Jags running away with this thing, might just be 4 really wildly average teams. But on the other side, Dameon Pierce probably got to be the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year right now. That dude's come out and balled each and every week. He is a physical, downhill... He's a motherfucker. There's really no other way to put that. Like, that dude goes out there and just runs his ass off.
It gave me reminiscence of Arian Foster when it was, you would just go to the Texans to see a really dynamic running back.
Yeah, I was trying to get his numbers pulled up here really quick in this game. 26 carries for 99 yards and a touchdown, but that's just kind of been him. And you, every weekend, I feel like you turn on the TV, you see some sort of Dameon Pierce highlight popping up here for a guy that I think a lot of people, I don't know, I think we just tend to leave most of the stuff with the Texans for dead, and that was already the testament to Davis Mills from last year and what this group had been able to put together. So, yeah, that's a dude, a full-blown dude in a team that is going to have a lot more games that don't go this way for the majority of the season. Speaking of the AFC South, Brandon, Titans 21 over the Washington Commanders at 17. And Brandon, the only thing I have to say about this game, Brian Robinson, running back out of Alabama, coming back for the Washington Commanders in this game.
Ooh, yes.
After missing game time because he was shot twice in an attempted robbery before the season, coming back out and being introduced in the pregame warmups as a starter to 50 Cent's Many Men. And they had him filmed from behind, the same way that we all lost our mind over Edwin Diaz's run out from the dugout with Narco playing in the background, where they had the camera behind him and ran with him. To watch Brian Robinson run out and hear 50 Cent "Wish Death Upon Me" hitting in the background at the same time is one of the hardest things I've ever seen.
It was bone chilling, Mike. Very happy that he's okay. I'm glad that he had this wonderful setting to come back in, and he actually had a decent game. So that's the most important part.
Yeah, carried the ball 9 times for 22 yards, which is sort of emblematic of Washington's larger problems. Not really Brian Robinson, who's got no problems right now. He has got a solution to his problems, but that was one of the coolest things I saw and one of the coolest clips from this weekend. And also congrats to him for being able to come back from that and just survive, period. I mean, being part of a carjacking or attempted robbery, whatever you want to call it, has to be a pretty harrowing experience. And so coming back and getting to just play NFL football after that's sort of wild.
Yeah, with his legs, the ones he got shot in. Crazy 6 weeks later. The coolest thing from that game for me was the Dyami Brown from UNC. Did he go to UNC?
Yes, he did.
Okay. 3 catches, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns, Mike. Those 2 touchdowns were beautiful. Talking about the NFC East, the worst team in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders, have a quite the explosive offense, and Carson Wentz looks kind of real. No one's happier after lost than Carson Wentz. His ass smiling at the post-game podium, just answering questions like, "Hey, yeah, we got to figure it out. You know, it's gonna hit sometime." But all that said, there was nothing really to look at and be like, "Oh, that's great," other than Dyami. How do you say his name?
Dyami Brown.
Dyami Brown.
Yeah, they are really like the team that Dyami Brown came from in college. Like North Carolina, wildly explosive offense and not much else in the ways of consistency. Carson Wentz, extremely boomer bust quarterback. And he's probably smiling because for him, if he keeps playing like that and giving shots like that, he might keep getting, we talked about earlier, how you'll roll the dice for quarterbacks with ability. Carson Wentz is the ultimate version of that guy. Like he's the, significant other that everyone thinks that they can fix because the sex is so good. Like every once in a while, he's going to pop out of here with some of that good. And you're going to be like, oh man, I remember why people were going after Carson for this whole time here. And then, he's not going to do the dishes and he's going to forget to call you when he lands in a new city and you're not going to know where he is for 18 hours at a time. And then all of a sudden he's going to come back home and he's going to have flowers and whisper sweet nothings into your ear.
To bring it back to the beginning of the podcast, Carson will get you mesmerized when what that mouth do. You know what I mean? You're like, ooh, Jesus. I forgot you could do it like that.
That's a visual I want to acid wash from my brain immediately. Brandon, Buccaneers 21, Falcons 15. This game, late rally from the Falcons in the fourth quarter of this game. Tom Brady throws for 1 billion yards in this one, but my takeaway is the Falcons might be the team that I wanted the Lions to be. I think.
Great take.
I think watching this team week in and week out with Arthur Smith offensively, what they do, Marcus Mariota's never going to have gaudy stats, but they do a bunch of fun, creative stuff on offense. That obviously took a hit. Cordell Patterson injured in the last game that they played, but in general, very creative approach there, which obviously you expect from a coordinator with an offensive background. That's part of why you make the hires for these guys. They're never going to be very good because their defense still can't stop much of anything, but I think they're at least going to make things close and fun, which is its own lane in the NFL that more teams I am comfortable with occupying. If you're going to be bad, at least be fun and creative and bad so you can get football Twitter people sharing cool things that your offense does.
Mike, I don't want to hear you say that the Falcons can't stop anybody when Grady Jarrett had a game-winning sack on Tom Brady, and it turned into what was it? Roughing the passer penalty? Roughing the passer because Tom Brady fell while getting sacked. Like, that's essentially what happened on that play.
It was the most egregious call of the weekend. Not a most egregious call of the weekend. The most egregious call of the weekend. Grady Jarrett, who you're right, has been a man-possessed. Whatever you want to say about the Falcons' defense does not apply to Grady Jarrett, who is playing incredible football. I turned on tape week 1 of that dude and saw him inside, and I want to be abundantly clear. Nobody is Aaron Donald, but as far as size profile, being a guy who's like 6'1" and under, not over 300 pounds, and then style of play, which is extremely active hands, disruptive, and upfield penetrating. He's as close as you've got in the NFL to an actual comp for Aaron Donald. And it's not even like Costco brand Aaron Donald. It's just like that one step down where Aaron Donald does everything physically so much faster. He is definitely smaller and lighter of the two, and that shows up in just how fast and violent he is. But Grady Jarrett is not that far off from that in the way that he plays.
The two things that have me thinking about each other, but obviously, Grady Jarrett is the one who's not Aaron Donald, so you always think about him compared to Aaron Donald. Leverage, right, and hand placement, Mike. I mean, I'm trying to find something unique to say about him, but everything I end up saying in my head sounds like I'm talking about Aaron Donald. But he's done making his move on the offensive lineman before the running back gets the ball. I always approach analyzing every defensive lineman from who would I like to block the least.
and what gives the most trouble. And we talked about this before on the podcast. You have really two styles of defensive lines, right? You have people that are going to be two gappers. They're going to get up there, try and hold, keep offensive linemen and double teams from getting to linebackers so they can run scot-free and make the plays. And then you got some of these other teams, 49ers-esque teams that are just get upfield, penetrate, cause hell, and wreak havoc in the backfield. And that is, to me, so much more difficult because you got to have fast guys to do that. You got to have quick guys to do that. And dealing with that is always the hardest thing, no matter what position you play in football. Addressing the threat of speed is the number one thing anyone's got to lead with because it's the number one thing that can kill you. And for Grady Jarrett and Aaron Donald and these guys that operate in the middle that are a bit undersized, me not knowing if what I am targeting to hit, when I get a look pre-snap up there as an offensive lineman, I walk up, it's how is the defense aligned? What is our job on offense? Who am I working to and with who on the offensive line? And then I pick my trajectory based off that. And I'm firing off trying to drill dude on that play. And now all of a sudden, if I'm hitting his after image as he's hit an arm over behind and is quick enough to redirect upfield, it's a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. And that play was complete and utter bullshit. Tom Brady even tried to kick at him or swipe at him a little bit on the way up. I genuinely thought, and foolish of me to think that anyone was going to punish Tom Brady on the football field in the NFL, I thought they might get Tom Brady for that extracurricular after the fact because it looked like he got up and kicked at or swiped at Grady Jarrett a little bit, who just caught him at an angle and wrestled him down because you also can't land on the dude anymore. So he tries to alligator tackle. No, that's what I'm saying. He did what he did trying to alligator tackle him in large part because you can't go and hit these guys flush and land on him anymore. The league's made sure you don't do that. So that was in every one of these hits. If I'm not with him physically, spiritually, I feel like a hologram of my father pop up, just disgusted, looking at the TV, seething in blind rage at what the NFL's done to defensive linemen.
It's disgusting, and it's all around Tom Brady. So we'll let this go because no one expected the Falcons to win that game anyways. But I can't believe we talked about the Falcons so much, and we will move on. But I hated at the beginning of the year, but now I'm obsessed with and love the minions at the wide receiver core for the Atlanta Falcons. It's like everyone's the exact same height and length, and I don't know who's catching it, but they're effective.
When we first got to Notre Dame, we had David Grimes, George West, and a couple of other wide receivers that were affectionately dubbed the Smurfs by the media. And I think this has a very similar feel to it. There's something to be said for having every one of your weapons be the same size and using that as confusion for the defense. Brandon, let's finally move on and stop talking about the Falcons so much. The Jets 40, the Dolphins 17. And this one had a lot more to do with what went on the Dolphins sideline in this game. The majority of this game ends up being played by former 7th-round draft pick Skylar Thompson out of Kansas State, who was a really good college quarterback, but was thrown into the fire for the first time against a Jets team that is starting to kind of get their shit together. But
especially on defense.
Yeah, especially on defense. But Brandon, this game, to me, a lot more about, and I don't know if it would be the Alanis Morissette version of irony that's not actually irony, but the Miami Dolphins, who were a part of the concussion fiasco with Tua Tagovailoa on Thursday Night Football, that ends up now changing almost immediately the rules around how we address the concussion policy that the NFL and the NFLPA recently agreed on. On the first play from scrimmage in this game, you had the Dolphins backed up and tackled for a safety on the first play. Teddy Bridgewater was forced out of that game. He took a hit at the beginning of that game, and Sauce Gardner, the Jets rookie, blitzed, hit him. Bridgewater was called for intentional grounding. It was resulted in the safety, and then the Dolphins announced that he had injured his elbow and was examined for a concussion, but he was then ruled out under the new concussion protocol. Mike McDaniel said Bridgewater doesn't have any concussion systems and passed the test, but a spotter saw him stumble, and so he was removed for the game because that was what people were so up in arms about the last game. And so they changed now to where when you show one of those things, you're pulled out of the game and can't go back in anymore. And so it's not, it's not funny. It's not anything like that, but it is, again, that feels like that Alanis Morissette irony that the rule the Dolphins were a part of because so many people were curious about how they handled the situation around Tua ends up being a large part of the reason why you err on the side of safety, which we love for Teddy Bridgewater, who's been a guy who's dealt with horrific injury in his career, not head injury, but, the knee injury he sustained in Minneapolis. Love that, but it, and this is going to be, and I think I forget if I talked about this with Dad on this podcast or if I was on God Bless Football with him. This is going to be now on the other side, eventually, probably not now in the immediacy after. This is going to be a point of frustration for players and teams, I'd imagine, who are going to say, we've got a perfectly healthy quarterback who passed this process that we have right here, a player who probably feels frustrated on the sideline that they can't go back in and help and affect their team, who's going to now be limited because the NFL, once again, not trustworthy on this front, has to operate with an overwhelming amount of caution to make sure that they appear to be doing the right things, even if they may not be affecting it as much as people want. And it ends up putting the Dolphins in a position where they get blasted by the Jets. Just to update everyone, by the way, specifically, the amended concussion protocol prohibits a player from returning to play if he shows ataxia, a term describing impaired balance or coordination caused by damage to brain or nerves. Under the previous protocol, in Tua's case, a player with gross motor instability, difficulty walking, could return to play if doctors decided. So they literally just put a Band-Aid on the specific thing that happened with Tua, which is a reminder, this one fix is not going to be the thing that betters NFL's approach to concussions across the league. It's going to be a thing, but it was super specific and doesn't broadly address more of the larger concerns that exist around concussions or around the NFL's handling with them. So not an not a really atypical. It's about what we expected from the NFL. We will address this one thing that PR-wise was a real nightmare for us. Brandon, Saints 39, Seahawks 32. Taysom Hill is human duct tape. Whatever you need him to be, Taysom Hill can be when called upon. And we all thought it was a weird relationship that Sean Payton had with Taysom Hill, where he would take off a future Hall of Famer and Drew Brees to try and get his kink on during these games with a quarterback with incredible physical ability. But Brandon,
QB/tight end.
Yeah, he's the ultimate slashy, to borrow the term from Zoolander. It was ridiculous.
What I saw from Taysom Hill reminded me of, I always get the longest yard and the whole 9 yards mixed up, but which one was the longest yard?
The longest yard happened in prison.
Listen, it's too familiar for me. But when Stone Cold Steve Austin was one of the guards and ran over to Nelly, who was a running back, that's how a white man runs the football. Like, that's what I get from Taysom Hill. And Christian McCaffrey. It's like, that's how a white man runs a football. Like, I'll show you.
Christian McCaffrey's got too nice a haircut for me to believe that about him. I don't want to necessarily put that on Taysom Hill either.
It's a compliment.
Is it? Saying you run the football with slightly racist intentions?
The movie was slightly racist intentions. I'm talking about specifically in this game, though. Like, remember how Jason Sehorn used to show us how a white man plays corner? Like, yes, Taysom Hill showing us how a white man runs the ball.
Jason Sehorn showed us how well a white man plays corner, well enough to be the last one that we played corner. Taysom Hill, one pass for 22 yards and a touchdown, 9 rushes for 112 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. It was ridiculous. And he walked out there like full Tim Tebow. I always joke a lot of these quarterbacks coming up had Tim Tebow posters on their wall because they leave the game covered in blood and full of scratches with a dirty jersey the way Tebow always used to. I feel like he made that hot.
That's hilarious. I mean, you're right. And this was another one of those upsets that I saw, Mike. I think the line on this game was the Seahawks -5.5. And I was like, I don't know about that. And then as the game kept going and Geno Smith was like making them score more points, I was like, oh, okay, I was right. Like, the Saints are underdogs for a reason in this game. And then Taysom Hill.
Yeah, you know what? Again, and Taysom Hill, like human duct tape, because he's not the perfect solution for your problem, but he can get you out of most any jam on the right occasion. long term, this team's so banged up. Jameis Winston out of this game. Dealing with losses at wide receiver as well. Michael Thomas out of this game. That's the story for this Saints team. What you thought you had coming back and what you've got available to you now just aren't there. Depth in their cornerback room getting tested in a very real way. And I think I saw Aaron Schatz say right now through 5 weeks, Geno Smith is the number 1 DVOA quarterback in football, which is not a thing any of us expected to get to say. And relative to what we saw with Russell Wilson, who did get some bail, I think you saw he had a procedure for a partially torn lat, which answered some of our questions about why things looked so bad in that game. The guy was clearly hurt, which I will say, we said on this podcast, a lot of people took an opportunity to make things deeply personal about Russell Wilson coming off of that game, which, not overly surprising. He's pretty polarizing, but Geno Smith on the other side, ballin'. Brandon, Patriots 29, Lions 0. Big takeaway from this one, Bill Belichick has a kink. Per ESPN, the Patriots moved to 5-0 under Bill Belichick, with quarterbacks drafted outside of the first round making their debut start. The rest of the NFL is 30-80 in such games since Belichick became New England's head coach in 2000. I know that's the peak ESPN stat for you, but it really, Bill Belichick just, and I understand, part of that is certainly the Tom Brady factor in all this, but This is just what this guy does. And we said this coming into the game based on what we saw last week when Bailey Zappi got thrown into the fire on the fly in that game when people were getting hurt. Brian Hoyer out with a concussion, Mac Jones still dealing with the high ankle injury. Bailey Zappi came in and played just well enough in an offense that looked, and really a team that looked like last year. They went out and beat the shit out of the Lions up front. And this is now a couple weeks in a row the Patriots offensive line looks back online in the ways that they were last season. Ramondre Stevenson went off on the ground. And the Lions, man, this thing might be broken. All the Hard Knocks goodwill seems like it may be waving bye-bye at this point. And a team that was the highest scoring team in the NFL got blanked by this Patriots team this season. Amon-Ra St. Brown was back in this game, albeit, I'm sure not 100%. Still no DeAndre Swift in the backfield, but there just can't keep being excuses for the way that this defense looks week after week, as much as I love Dan Campbell.
I agree, but I think there may be more of a conversation of this is a perfect example of tiers of the NFC and the AFC, right? Where a lower tiered AFC Patriots team still good enough to keep the Lions scoreless.
Yeah,
they have been competitive.
It is a reminder of, and listen, part of this is coaching. For Bill Belichick and company to be able to go out here and weather the storm in that. It hasn't been perfect this year, and high-end wise, we have a lot of questions about what an offense led by Matt Patricia and Joe Judge and whatever combination of them exists can do. But for them to all be able to put duct tape on this situation enough to get a rookie late-round pick at quarterback out in a game where you put up 29 points, even if it's against the Lions, who have been giving up points like they're going out of style, like they're on sale. It is buy one, get one off when you're playing against the Lions on defense at this point. But it's sad. We love the Lions around here. We've talked about this being a Lions podcast, but it's getting harder and harder to watch and justify right now, which honestly may end up being the best thing for the Lions at this point. We talked about if they were somehow middle of the pack this year and better than expected, what does that do for you long term? Jared Goff, who has played well this year in certain stretches, isn't your long-term answer if you want to take the next step as a franchise. This might actually, if they bottom out, put them in position to be able to draft a quarterback that actually could help change your franchise in an upcoming draft that's supposed to have a few of them. So something to keep an eye on there. Vikings, 29, Bears, 22. Brandon, I know it ends up being a loss. I think this is a big game. Justin Fields took a step forward in this game. It finally didn't look like a fire drill the entire time offensively for them. I saw Courtney Cronin, the ESPN Bears reporter, throw up the second half stats for Justin Fields. 12 of 13 for 135 yards passing and a touchdown, 5 rushes for 36 yards. I just thought it looked composed for the first time. The connection with him and Cole Kmet started to show up a little bit. Right. And for the Bears, that is the only, we're going to talk about metrics of how you judge certain teams. His development to me is the most important and only metric. Velus Jones back on the field and scored a touchdown on his first offensive touch, the rookie receiver out of Tennessee that people were excited about there. So I thought that was big for them this week.
Yeah, but And obviously, yeah, you got to take little moral victories or little things like this for a young quarterback in their second year, which is important and great. But I'll be a broken record with this, Mike. Justin Jefferson will be the number one wide receiver in the NFL at the end of the season. Like, he's proving it week in and week out. And I'm enjoying watching it every time. He's number one in yards with 54 this season, number two in receptions with 40. Doesn't have the touchdowns there, but he's throwing the ball. He's everything you would want from a first-round weapon on offense. First-round draft pick weapon on offense, obviously, this deep in the year. What is he? I think he's already beat Randy Moss's record for receptions and yards for the first 3 seasons for the Vikings.
Yeah, he's been an absolute freak, dude. That guy is one of the surest commodities in the NFL, and he's become so at a very rapid pace, to your point. All right, Brandon, Chargers 30, Browns 28. And Keenan Allen is a reminder that celebrities are just like us and the dangers of live tweeting your favorite teams or your employer's sporting events. Because we saw him going through it. This is why I stopped live tweeting Notre Dame games, especially if I've been drinking at all, because I cannot trust myself with loving you, to quote John Mayer. Keenan Allen's tweet when Brandon Staley, who was the other coach to make fourth down news this weekend, I think in this case, wrongly went for it in the spot that he did. Keenan Allen tweeted out simply, "WTF are we doing?" Followed by, "So glad he missed that, because man, and then "Great win, boys." 3 tweets that really summed up the experience at the end of this game. And for anyone that missed it, so there was fourth down with 1:14 remaining after Los Angeles had held on for a 30-28 win over there. Browns rookie kicker Cade York missed a 54-yard field goal with 11 seconds in this game. But for Brandon Staley, with 1:14 remaining, his team was on its own 46 and had that 2-point lead. Staley called a timeout, and then instead of punting, he had Justin Herbert go on the field and attempt a short pass to Mike Williams that ended up falling incomplete. The Browns went back, but York just ended up missing the kick. Brandon, at that point in time, Brandon Staley, who this year had been weirdly, inexplicably reverted back into the pumpkin of being a defensive-minded head coach who's at times kind of risk-averse, picking now to put your foot all the way back down on the pedal and decide you were going to be the guy that goes out there and tries to win it, to me was just surprising. And again, so much of what fourth down decision making is about consistency and your team knowing the plan. And I felt like early on, that's why I was a little confused by their decision making early in some of these games. The Chiefs game sticks out in my mind of a spot where they did not go out there and try and win in those same margins, and what that does to the consistency of your team in those moments. It's not to say, again, they're always small sample sizes, but this was one spot where I was just surprised he chose this moment to be aggressive when, at that point, pinning Jacoby and Brissett and company back and trying to give them the long field before that, after draining more clock, to me seemed like it would have been the play.
Well, nowadays, I feels like the line's been blurred of being aggressive away and on the road. Right, like what we saw from the Chargers and Brandon Staley makes sense in that atmosphere on the road in Cleveland. I like the fact that there's some more guessing that's being put into it, because at this point in time, Brandon Staley was kind of, you could predict what he was going to do, kind of like you can with John Harbaugh.
Well, but he used to be. This season, I'm saying he hadn't been, and that had been surprising to me overall. And he said, we believe in our process, we trust our players, all that stuff. I'm saying we had not seen that so far this season, and that's why this was surprising to me. Cleveland also had no timeouts in this situation, so driving the length of the field becomes a more tenuous prospect then. It's just certain things about this spot. And I know so many of these guys have a book. They've got the go sheet, the go on the call sheet there, and they're operating by win probability, which I get. I didn't get the chance to see win probability wise where some models had this one. I was just surprised based off his previous actions this season. I love the thought process in most situations of going out and wanting to win it instead of losing it. I watched that happen this weekend in the college football game that I called, but I just think overall this one was as questionable a decision as we've seen Brandon Staley make given the timing and the circumstances of this game. Bills 38, Steelers 3. As expected, the Steelers right now, bigger story is how banged up they are on defense. TJ Watt still not out there on the field. I saw Cam Hayward was dealing with it a little bit during this game. Kenny Pickett goes out there and fills up the stat sheet in this game. They can't do a damn thing inside the red zone. I feel like what I'm interested in now, because the Steelers are trending in the direction of bad football team. Offensively, they were bad football team, and defensively now they are just injured football team, which is making them less effective. Buffalo is again one of those pipe flushing teams. But for the Steelers, who now sit at 1-4, and not to play the schedule game too much, but when you've got a rookie quarterback, it's always something to consider. The next 3 games that you had the Buffalo Bills, and then Kenny Pickett is going to play against the Tampa Bay Bucks defense that we've talked about as one of the best in the league, the Miami Dolphins defense, and then the Eagles. And those last 2 are both on the road. That is not necessarily the welcome to the NFL moment that you want for your young quarterback. And if this keeps trending that way, things might lighten up a little bit towards the back. I'm not going to go through the whole schedule, but the point is the Steelers are trending towards bad football team, and I wonder if this is a team that's going to be able to flip the switch and say how we approach this season changes, or if Mike Tomlin, who has been a walking above 500 record since he took over this head coaching job 2 popes ago, it feels like, if it's still going to be the standard around there, because that's just not a franchise that's you would ever even associate with the idea of tanking. They won games with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, for Christ's sake. And so I'm inclined to believe that the Steelers and Mike Tomlin are not going to change their approach of trying to go out there and win every game and making sure that this isn't just a developmental season. But I feel like when you take a quarterback in the first round, you've got not different problems, but maybe different metrics that you've got to start to think by, and how you go out there and put him in the best situation to win needs to be at the top of that list, which it's not to say that can't coincide and go along with winning football. Those certainly can go hand in hand, but it's just going to be fascinating to watch them because they're in a situation they haven't been in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, they took a quarterback in the first round this draft. Last year's draft, they took Najee Harris, took a running back. So they're trying to rebuild this offense, and it's going to take time. I'm excited to see Mike Tomlin coach through what will probably be his first losing season.
Yeah, I think at this point that is starting to feel like a safer bet than I ever would have been more comfortable with saying before the season. But you're right. You look all over that offense at your swapped out your offensive line last year in a really meaningful way. That group's still coming on. Chase Claypool and George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, your wide receiver room now in there. Your tight end, Pat Freiermuth, only a couple years into the league. Young quarterback, young running back. It is really learning on the fly for that unit that was going to be buoyed by defense that, again, now is just starting to see too many guys dealing with nagging injuries that could change this. Brandon, last one, Giants 27, Packers 22.
Well, can we get a drum roll for this? Finally get to this 9:30 a.m. game. Whew.
Green Bay enters Week 6, and this is courtesy of Ian Kenyon, who is the associate editor for the NFL at Bleacher Report. Green Bay enters Week 6 with a 3-2 record and a +1 point differential after the safety at the end of that game. Brandon, I can't trust this Green Bay Packers team. I said this was going to be a big measuring stick game, that you're going on the road, which I get. London poses different challenges. But this Giants team on defense, super banged up, signing guys off the street, coming over there without, 4 or 5 of their starting wide receivers, having to run the fucking Wildcat for a little bit in this game, and doing so effectively is insane. And it is an indictment of a Packers defense that you was thin up front. Understood that going into this one. Devontae Wyatt not available for this game. They were going to be thin bodies, and that showed late in this game. The Packers jumped out up early, and the Giants just kept grinding them down. And Saquon Barkley continues to look incredible, and Daniel Jones went out and played admirably on an injured ankle that we knew he had coming into this game. But for the Packers,
like that, Mike.
What's that?
Don't do him like that. It was more than admirable what Daniel Jones is doing. He's tough as nails out there.
He is. And that's, what, the best thing you can say about this Giants team is tough and resilient. It's kind of what we said about the Dallas Cowboys, is they've managed to battle through all that. You saw fired up Brian Daboll, which, my God, watching him and Matt LaFleur shake hands is the funniest thing in the world, because Matt LaFleur is every bit of money haircuts, good-looking young coach, and Brian Daboll looks like my buddy Tito, who just looks like me, but if you made me 5'11". And and it is so wonderful. And it's one of those things. Brian Daboll is going to win a lot of New York points. I thought Kenny Pickett scored a lot of Steelers points and a lot of Pittsburgh points by trying to fight a D lineman at the end of that game who went low on him. Brian Daboll is going to score a ton of New York points with his fired up "let's effing goes" at the end of that game running out to the crowd.
No, Mike, what he's going to win New York points for is those players hugging him the way they do. They get done with their series and they run over to their head coach and in jubilation as if he's one of the team. Like, you didn't see this from Tom Coughlin. Like, what I like so much about this Giants defense is they remind me of those Coughlin defenses with the defensive line is getting after the quarterback. They're oozing. Like, as soon as the ball is snapped, it's just a matter of seconds before the defensive line is in the quarterback's lap.
You're right. It was funny. Emmanuel Sanders was talking. I forget whose halftime show he's on, but played for the Bills with Brian Daboll in there. And he said, he goes, Daboll used to FaceTime me on the weekends and he'd be chugging a cigar and telling me how he's diagramming plays and stuff. And it just seems like he is and this is kind of what happens sometimes. We talk all the time about assistants who make that jump to head coach and how it's not always a perfect skill fit because some of these guys are just gifted play callers, gifted play designers, but some of them also, and we see this, I think, a lot more in the NBA, when you're on the bench in the NBA or you're an assistant in the NFL, you get to have a closer relationship with the guys day in and day out. You get to be more of that, partner in this than sometimes the head coach, who even in the NFL, for how different that dynamic is than college, still you've got to be that CEO. You've got to see things from kind of a different vantage point, and you don't get as much of that day-to-day FaceTime. Brian Daboll seems to have weaponized some of that same stuff that we, and myself included, wanted for Dan Campbell and saw with Dan Campbell, where if nothing else, it is incredibly authentic. For Brian Daboll, he's got more proof of concept as far as offensive development of players in critical positions that we saw from Buffalo than you had for Dan Campbell as far as proof of concept. But both of them do I am going to do this very authentically myself in a way that's really helpful. And so again, nothing but positives. That Giants team, you have to take seriously now, because while high-end success-wise, we'll see. They're 4-1. The NFC East looks like it could be the best division in football. We know the AFC West top-end talent-wise, but they're banged up in Chargers country in a way that's very real and needs to be addressed. The Raiders are 1-4 right now, and the Broncos are this year's Broncos. So the NFC East, at least record-wise, you've got the lone undefeated team in the Eagles, and then 2 4-1 teams in Dallas and the Giants that no one would have seen coming given the trajectory of their season. But Brandon, just one quick word, and I know this has turned into way more than one thought on all of these as we tried our best.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Yeah, we'll get better at all this. The Packers, we talked about Tyreek Hill and that loss being felt by the Chiefs, which clearly overstated. The loss of Devontae Adams in Green Bay cannot be overstated. This is an offense that...
Really?
Yes, I think this is an offense that down the stretch of this game had to rely too much on low percentage throws down the field that used to be high percentage throws when you had Devontae Adams on the receiving end of those. And that math changing for Green Bay has created an interesting problem, because running back and tight end room wise, they can get the ball to really competent players that are helpful for this team. Offensively, they're still working that rotation on the O-line. I think David Bakhtiari getting back in that pitch count and working his way back there is going to create some issues, because if you're constantly shuffling guys, even good guys up front, it creates some variance. But I think it all stems back from they don't have one receiver that is the game-breaking threat. And in that offense that relies so much on the quarterback being able to get the ball to the receivers, pulling it from these run looks, it does, I think, change the way you operate in critical moments. And those were the moments that ended up failing for the Green Bay Packers down the stretch in this game.
I thought the Packers looked the best they did on offense in this game, Mike, when it comes to just the different types of things they did and how they moved the ball and how it was distributed. I thought everyone ate, and it was, there was a lot of plays in the first half where it looked like Aaron Rodgers was doing his version of the layups, just kind of like 100%. Extending the play. It was just it seemed like they were doing anything they wanted to do, and then for the Giants to still survive and actually win this game was really impressive, because I thought the Packers did what they normally do on offense. Aaron Rodgers mentioned this in the postgame, which I don't love, but the defense for the Packers weren't as stout as they're used to be.
No.
Are they used to being?
That's definitely been the failing. But at some point, I still expect the offense led by Aaron Rodgers to be able to go out and make the plays. And down the stretch of this game, as it turned into into Aaron Rodgers pulling and throwing a bunch of those go balls to wide receivers that were some bad throws and were some just guys that could not make the same individual insane play that we got used to on that other side. I think it's just something to monitor in critical moments. The defense is much more the concern and the reason why I'm finally going to bump them out of my damn top 5. Can't do it anymore. No disrespect to the Giants, but this was the measuring stick game. Based on who the Giants didn't take over to London, you had to win. You didn't. You're out of the top 5 now. So, one time for the one time ended up being more like 2 or 3 things for that time. We'll get better at that as we go. If that's something you enjoyed, again, at GoJo Show on Twitter, let us know format-wise if we can do better for you on an NFL Monday. Brandon, we'll try and move with some more pace here because it is Monday. We got roses to give out on this show, you and I, Bachelor and Bachelorette style, to top performers from the weekend. So weekend roses, Brandon, I will give you your first crack at this one right now. Who's your first rose going out to? Top performer, anything and anyone from the weekend potentially available.
Well, actually, I'm glad you did this because it's a perfect segue because Saquon Barkley, will you accept this rose? Mike, the resurgence of Saquon Barkley is something that I'm very, very excited about after being drafted second overall in the 2018 draft and had a really, really good first year. He's been really struggled with injuries, and you know, my conspiracy theory mind is like, oh, he's doing too many commercials. He needs to focus on getting like, well, you know, whatever it is that happened, Saquon Barkley is back. He is third in attempts rushing with 97, second in yards with 533, tied for fifth with touchdowns with 3, and averaging 5.5, which is in the top 10 of the NFL, which I think is really impressive because if you get into that top 10, there's probably a decent amount of quarterbacks up there. Not a lot of guys that are taking the majority of the load on the running game. But outside of his actual production, Mike, what he did, excuse me, specifically in this game. Let me try to find my notes. Let me try to find my notes here in this doc because Saquon Barkley was the reason that they won this game. He left the game briefly in the third quarter. That was a huge drive. I think it was 91 yards, 15 plays, like broke records on both sides of the NFL for the season when it comes to plays in a drive and yards in a drive. But after he came back, that was when the Giants tied it up with the Green Bay Packers 2020. So they came back. He had some splash plays. I think he had a 41-yard gain on the ground, 40 yards in the air. All that being said, Saquon Barkley is back. I think whatever it was that the Giants, when they drafted him, they thought they can make this team with Saquon Barkley being the head of it. I think they finally got it.
Yeah, sort of unprecedented, too. I think you'll see people starting to try and go out here and comment more on just what an anomaly it is to be a running back dealing with that kind of injury earlier in your career and the lack of help up front, which has changed this year. We talked about yards before contact stats last week on Friday. He's getting good push from the group up front, and it's allowing him to go out and be special in all the ways that we weren't sure he was going to be able to again. So awesome to see Saquon balling back out in that way. Brandon, my first rose from this weekend is going to go to Kansas backup quarterback Jason Bean. So Kansas hosted College game day against TCU. They end up falling in this game, and I said after, if the AP knocks whoever lost that game, because it was close down to the end, out of the top 25, they're monsters. And thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. TCU gets the bump up for the win. They stay undefeated. I'll actually be on the radio call for that for Learfield with TCU and Oklahoma State down in Fort Worth this weekend. Battle of undefeateds in the Big 12. But for Jason Bean, took over. Jalen Daniels had been a dark horse Heisman candidate, had struggled in the last couple of games, including this first half, but Jalen Daniels went down with an injury at the end of the first half, and most people thought, all right, that's kind of going to be a wrap on Kansas's day, and instead, Bean goes out 16 of 24 for 262, 4 touchdowns, and an interception in this game. Ran the offense. I mean, the offense didn't miss a beat. I think Bean was a transfer from North Texas, and dynamic, incredibly dynamic as a runner, really did a lot of the same things that Jalen Daniels did. They did not have to alter what has been one of the more fun and creative offenses in college football. Kansas went out on their shield, not with it, but it was an incredible performance, a really great showing for them on College game day, and for this kid to be ready when his number was called upon. Jason Bean, take a bow. It was a really, really impressive performance. I didn't see what the long-term injury status was on Jalen Daniels, but if they've got to go forward with this player, they seem to be in pretty good hands.
Yeah, Mike, that was a great game, and you hyped it up for a very long time, and it was everything and more.
It was the game of the weekend in college football, I think, bar none. Who do you got second rows, Brandon?
Really? You didn't like Texas A&M, Alabama?
I mean, it lost some of the luster once Bryce Young was out of that game. And I get the Jalen Milroe. We just talked about a backup quarterback here, so I shouldn't short Jalen Milroe for Alabama. You had the exciting final play and all the buildup, but I just think that Kansas TCU thrived for different reasons, and a lot of that was incredible offense, which I'm a victim of overweighting offense in the way that I now analyze how fun a game is. So.
Okay, I've noticed that. I've noticed that about you because
I'm a former offensive player, and I'm someone who understands what's entertainment value in football. Like, there's a reason the NFL games all the rules for offense, Brandon. It's not like any steady secret. Offense is what drives people to watch football games. It's not hard.
I know. I'm with. I hear you, but I look at it a little differently because I'm such a defensive-minded person. Like, I saw Dwight Freeney talking to Kay Adams about how he loved that Broncos-Colts game because it was just like defense and field goals, and Dwight Freeney would because that Colts team that he was on back in the day. But I enjoy the defensive games, but I understand that the talking points have to be around the offense. Like I enjoy talking about two different things.
It's not even the talking points. Like, it's just clearly what fans like. They wouldn't do all of this if fans loved watching the style of defensive football that we used to see for a number of years. It's just what it is. Every sport is searching for more offense in their sport.
Yes, and especially in college, especially at our alma mater, Notre Dame.
There we go. There we go.
Michael Mayer, will you accept this rose? Michael Mayer, I don't want to be too dramatic, but he was our offense against BYU in Las Vegas over the weekend. Notre Dame, we got a very impressive win over a 16th ranked BYU team as we were unranked coming into the game, but our defense was amazing. But the star of the game was Michael Mayer, junior tight end, who caught 11 passes for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. If you watch that game, I'd mention specifically we won 28-20 over BYU. Obviously going 3-2 on the season, but those 11 catches, Mike, I don't need to tell you about it, but record for Notre Dame for receptions from a tight end in a game. Also, Michael Mayer in this game broke the school record for career catches by a tight end. Previous record was 141. He broke it at 140. The career record was 140, but he ended the night with 146. But as a guy who coming from Covington Catholic, a Kentucky school in high school, with me, obviously being a Kentucky high school guy, very, very excited, very impressed to see him. Excited to see how he's grown, not only physically, but with his tools as well, Mike. He was already great as a sophomore and as a freshman, but to see how he's able to put everything on his back, like he literally cannot be guarded, and we need him to be unguarded.
It was awesome. He actually passed our former teammate Tyler Eifert for most catches by a tight end in Notre Dame history, I believe.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was a pretty cool moment to see. He's awesome, and I'm glad this offense has gotten a lot more online. Drew Pine at quarterbacks started to look a lot better in the last couple of games than his opener against Marshall, and it's allowed Michael Mayer to go out and get the attention he deserves. He's going to be a first-round draft pick. I was just worried this season was going to be so underwhelming statistically that might affect some of it at the top end. But the offense has started to come back. You mentioned it was there. Jaden Thomas, by the way, incredible. The freshman wide receiver, too, had a couple of monster catches in that game.
First touchdown this week.
I'm glad no one's still paying attention to Notre Dame right now. I'm going to start to be a little insufferable about this team again soon. Bullying people up front. I think they had 234 rushing yards in this game. So I'm just saying, Notre Dame working their way towards back. Those first 2 games, obviously ugly. The Ohio State loss, fine. Marshall, understand you can't do. 3 straight wins since then. A lot of people that left Notre Dame for dead, I think, are going to be surprised when they start playing more important football games soon. They got Stanford coming up this weekend, which they're like 17-point favorites. But that Clemson game, to me, and you can go back and check the tapes. I said at the start of this season, Clemson and USC were the measuring stick games for this season, what this team was going to be, and they come at opportune times in the schedule for being more developed into the team you're going to be, especially factoring QB injury in. So great rows there. Michael Mayer, awesome dude. Loved getting to hang out with him when we filmed that video, uniform video release. Great kid, awesome ambassador for the university. Very pumped for that one. Again, I'm gonna be back on my bullshit with the Notre Dame fandom soon. Laid down for a while, let the team go to work. I'm out in South Bend right now, so it's like I'm flying close to the sun and just getting all of my power back to come out here and be the asshole that most of you guys love to hate.
Taking notes.
Yeah, I've been out here in the lab. Get my pen ready. You better respect my pen, as Brandon would say. Better respect my pen. Brandon, my second rose is going to go to the Seattle Mariners. It was awesome to watch this weekend. The Mariners got a 10-9 win over the Blue Jays to head to the AL Divisional Series. They were down 8-1 in the bottom of the fifth. They rattled off 4 runs in the sixth, 4 runs in the eighth, 1 in the top of the ninth. It was the biggest road comeback win in playoff history and baseball's largest rally to clinch a postseason series, which seems uniquely Seattle. As Kevin Clark at The Ringer once said, the Seahawks have never played a normal football game, and it seems like their baseball team, back in the postseason for the first time since 2001, decided they would not play a normal postseason series either. So congrats to, I feel like, a lot of the Seattle people in the media, but friend of the show, Mina Kimes, obviously someone we love around here. Just kind of cool to see for Seattle sports, to see them not only get back, but now get to advance and play even more meaningful postseason baseball.
Hey, I'm ready for them, the best of five. Best of five. Who are they playing? Who are they up against again?
Didn't look that far ahead. Don't appreciate you asking me questions I didn't research.
Sorry.
Yeah, see?
I had it.
You put me,
I had it,
Brent,
and then
I've only got so much baseball in me.
Astros.
There we go. All right.
Astros. The cheating-ass Astros.
Thank you for saving me on that one. I've only got so much baseball in me at any point in time here. You got to the edges of it and decided to push even further, and now we've pulled back the curtain and people see me living the lie. Speaking of pulling back the curtain, Brandon, let's get to our picks from the weekend here as we try and land this plane here expeditiously. 6 thick picks and Brandon's Spooky Locktober underdog play of the weekend. Now the features around here going into the weekend. Another tough one out here on the 6 thick picks front for your boy. Over on the NFL. Lions Patriots over 46. Nah. Jags -7 against Houston. Nah. Packers -7 against the Giants. Nah. Took some big sucker lines there, got my ass whooped. College football, we went 2-3. Tennessee Vols -3, beating the hell out of LSU in Death Valley in a day game. Iowa and Illinois under 36.5, the most consistent force in nature. The Iowa under, take it, love it, enjoy it. The lone loss, Washington, not only losing against the spread, Washington 14-point favorites against ASU, losing outright to the head coachless Sun Devils. The free fall in the last couple of games for Washington, a little troubling. But Brandon, you have also got your Spooky Locktober play of the week. And man, you were close on that one. How do you feel coming off this weekend?
And, you know, it was the first pick, Mike, and I got excited. I went for the money line. It's like, F the points. They're going to win. And I should have took the points because Vegas knows what they're talking about. And if you're going to pick an upset, take the points because it was Cleveland -2. And the Bolts, the Chargers won by 2, Mike. They did. It was 30-28. And I was rooting for that game. But, you know, I'll learn from my mistakes. I'll get better. But the point is, I know what I'm talking about. And I'm gonna add. No,
I was thinking about you down the stretch too, because you had talked about Washington last week, I believe, as well. And that game got very spooky down the stretch and almost very dire. So 0-1 for Brandon's Spooky Locktober underdog play of the week so far. 12-22-2 on the season for the 6 thick picks, which, again, we're climbing out of the cellar. This week was definitely a setback going 2-4, but minor setback for a major comeback.
Is there any punishment that I should do? Because obviously you have your 6 thick picks, but for my lock, I feel like there's some type of like, should I do gassers? Like, I feel like there's some punishment that I should take from losing a lock, but maybe we should field source that as well.
Yeah, we'll crowdsource that along with your This, That, and the Third songs at GoJo Show on Twitter or in the comments at YouTube. Something new like that. Hit us there with potential punishments for Brandon going out here and failing in his lock of the week, even though I have offered myself up for no punishment for picking poorly in college of the NFL and will continue to not do that, as is my right. Brandon has now courted chaos, and so you guys can feel free to deliver chaos to his doorstep. But Brandon, before we deliver chaos in the form of song to everyone's doorstep on this podcast, we do want to talk to you guys about our good friends over at Game Time. New friends around here supporting us on the podcast. We ask you to support them, and it's easy to support them because they have something great that's going to help you here. Football season, we have in full swing. You've got games every weekend that, thanks to Game Time, you can go out and be there in person for. It's super easy. You guys have seen all of the great scenes from over the weekend, college or pro, all across the board. You've got great opportunities. You've also got opportunities elsewhere, and it seems like my experience with Game Time has just turned into a Harry Styles concert tracker, Brandon. I mentioned last week I'm out in Los Angeles. I'm looking forward to when Harry's house makes its way to LA and I can be a part of this. Just looking now, I'm back in South Bend for this week, which means I am close to Chicago. And so when I looked in Game Time in Chicago, if you're listening to this podcast on a Monday, Harry Styles is playing at the United Center in Chicago. And $166 I'm seeing right now for Harry Styles tickets in Chicago tonight, the day of you trying to find them. If it seems too good to be true, I assure you it's not, because it's true. I'm staring at it right now on my phone in the Game Time app. It is easy to go in, buy these tickets in the app, go and check out. I mentioned just how affordable that is. This is Harry freaking Styles we're talking about. It's tonight, and I can just go in here and click and get that right now. That's why Game Time is the fastest growing ticketing app that guarantees the lowest prices on tickets to all your favorite sporting events and shows. You can see the view from your seat in the app, and checkout takes less than 30 seconds. Download the Game Time app, create an account, redeem code GOJO for $20 off your first purchase. Again, promo code GOJO, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time, last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Brandon, Game Time is great. Do you know what time it is on this podcast?
That I do, Mike. I think this is going to be fun. The creepy and the kooky, mysterious and spooky, they're all together rookie, the this, that, and the third. Their house is a museum where people come to see them. They really are a scream, the this, that, and the third. The this, that, and the third. Dun-dun-dun.
I figured we were going to get to the Addams Family eventually, and man, it did not disappoint when it got here. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review GoJo. 5-star rating. Leave us a review. Unsubscribe. Resubscribe. And when you are reviewing, tell Brandon how much you enjoyed his performance. It is October. It is spooky season. He is continuing to look for spooky songs along the way. You guys have responded, and we have seen those, and we appreciate them at GoJo Show on Twitter. Guys. Thank you for the help on this front. It's going to pay off in the spookiest October of this, that, and the thirds we can possibly muster up. Brandon, speaking of spooky season, this was scary hours. The New York Mets, who in June 1st were 35-17, had a 10.5 game lead in the NL East before Jacob deGrom had even gotten back and started pitching, were eliminated in the wild card round last night by the San Diego Padres. They won 101 games this season. First time they've won 100 games since 1988, and became the 9th team to win 101 or more and to not finish first. Already sliding and losing the division to the Braves down the stretch of the season. Now suffering the setback here. Brandon, this is a team that this offseason is probably going to change in its complexion a lot, and a team that for so long felt like it might define normal Metsianess, and they have once again found their way into the mess. The reason that this fan base continues to never believe in the good things that are coming their way unfolded against the Padres in this series. Unbelievable to watch the meltdown over the last few weeks for this team.
It really has been bad. I mean, between Buck Showalter checking for illegal substances behind the ears of the Padres pitcher.
It was so sexy.
I was, and then outside of that, Max Scherzer said at the end of the game, and I love it because you get some emotion from him. He said it was a kick in the balls. To lose at this point in time in the season, he said to the media, is a kick in the balls, and I think that's the perfect way to put it.
What a stronger emotion than being kicked in the balls, as we well know. that checking for substances behind the ears, I was waiting for the umpire to just like give him a little kiss on the neck after. he was just kind of feeling him up like that. Well, like the ear touching, man. That's pretty intimate.
It is pretty intimate. It was very gentle. It wasn't looking for substance as much as it was looking for, like, I don't know, whatever the Astros do to get their pitch counts and stuff like that. But I just thought it was very interesting and also just kind of sad. Like, I was excited to see all these like Mets fans. Obviously, I'm a King of Queens guy, so Mets, Jets, Doug Heffernan. I was excited to see all the Mets fans in baseball actually celebrate a good season, and for it to end this way is just very. I'm trying to think. It's like, I don't know. I'm trying to find an NFL comp, but one of these teams that are acting like good teams, maybe the Eagles, just going to just completely shit the bed in the playoffs.
Yeah, man, I'm not going anywhere near putting that out in the universe, but you said it. It's not altogether wrong here. All right, Brandon, let's get to that from this weekend. In Formula One, you had the Japanese Grand Prix that went on Sunday. Incredibly rainy, low visibility conditions for everyone involved here. The race ended up being delayed for a lot of the rain stoppage for about 2 hours. But in the midst of all that, had a really scary moment. Pierre Gasly, who drives for AlphaTauri, ended up driving past a recovery vehicle at a high speed that could have caused a crash or far worse. You could hear on the audio from him inside the car, Pierre Gasly, understandably frustrated and pissed off by that moment. A lot of the drivers since then have been frustrated and pissed off because it was at this circuit 8 years ago that the sport saw the fatal loss of Jules Bianchi, driver who was killed suffering fatal head injuries after crashing into a recovery vehicle at that race. Earlier in this race, Carlos Sainz's car had crashed, and that vehicle was trying to get the remaining parts about that. But, Brandon, we talk about so much on this show, the NFL and their history and how it is forever linked to every decision that they make about concussions, head injuries, so many other things. This is a track and a sport that is so full of violence, and at this particular track, full of the memories of tragedy for so many drivers that knew Jules, loved Jules, and also just operate in that same profession and that same brotherhood. And to see a similar mistake almost made by the people operating that track that could have cost you a life. We saw changes made to the sport from the construction of the cars, the halo put in after that crash involving Jules, that have thankfully been able to save other people. But they understand, and this is what we talk, another thing, people that play these high-risk sports understand, and if everyone's upfront with the information about what we know, understand the risk and can make that educated decision of, is what this life offers me and the opportunity in this sport, what it offers me, worth the risk that I put my body through in this arena? These are the things that cannot be acceptable, and that these are errors that are made that are avoidable in a sport that's already dangerous enough that cannot happen. And so I hope that there is something that comes from this that forces the folks of the Japanese Grand Prix to have to make some real changes, because for this to have even been a possibility to happen again is inexcusable and very, very scary.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So that is, again, unfortunate part of the weekend. Thankfully, nothing happened and everyone was able to walk away from this one fine, but certainly hope that things change on that front. But Brandon, let's get to the third here, because I had something planned for the third. You told me off air that you had a curveball here, so I want to let you throw your best pitch.
Well, I know you're going to update us on the Fat Bear Week and the results there, and I enjoyed our segment there last week, but something else that happened over the weekend that we really didn't get a chance to talk about was Jordan Poole and Draymond Green. It's one of those things where, like, you're a little bit a day early on a topic, Mike. Since then, we've seen the altercation video that's been leaked out from TMZ.
Yeah.
Jordan Poole. actually had his debut in the preseason with the Warriors, 25 points in their loss against the Los Angeles Lakers. But he looked good despite being punched in the face recently. And Draymond Green is taking some time away from the team right now, and everyone in the NBA is talking about it. Twitter talked about it for a good 48 hours. Mike, where are you at on the altercation after seeing the video?
So the video is exactly what I expected. And this is what we do all the time, where we need a video for some people to clutch their pearls and confirm their horror about a situation. This is exactly what I thought happened. Like, I figured there was probably a scrap in the middle of all this. Two real things that come out of this for me. One, I dispute the people that call this a sucker punch. Jordan Poole went up and initiated contact, and I don't think you start shit without thinking shit's going to happen back to you. He walked up, they got chest to chest. Yes. He pushed Draymond Green away pretty forcibly, and then Draymond Green swung. This, to me, is Jordan Poole did not have the right scouting report. And I understand Saginaw, Michigan people are coming out of the woodwork saying that, hey, this is uniquely Saginaw and the way that he gets down. I wasn't aware. I thought Draymond Green was largely a guy. Usually guys that bark that much don't have the bite. It's just kind of how it operates. Someone who's usually ready to swing on someone doesn't have to go out there and often talk that much. Got to update the scouting report right now. Got to know better so we can do better. Draymond Green, that was clearly not the first time he had thrown that punch. That didn't look like a guy going out there and firing that bullet for the first time. But I dispute that it was a sucker punch. Again, if you're going to go up and get physical with someone, you got to be ready to protect yourself. And if you're going to do that, that says more about you to me than it says about the other side on that. I shouldn't say that, but I should say, if you're going to go get physical with someone and then you act surprised when you get punched in the face, that part's on you. You got to protect yourself in that spot if you're going to go make this physical altercation. Brandon, on the other side, though, and I'm really trying hard to look into myself and say, if I was inside that Golden State locker room right now, if we were back at Notre Dame and we had guys get into it before, I don't think we ever had a teammate fully get punched in the face in a setting like that at practice. And we were helmets. It's a different sport. It's a different sporting environment altogether.
I'll say not at the facility like that.
Yeah, but for that to happen there and for everyone involved to respond the way that they have, Draymond saying he failed as a leader, they're coming out and treating this like it was a death in the family, Brandon. Am I the only one that thinks this is kind of an overreaction? Like, they got pissed off at each other. People that play a physical sport, albeit not as violent a sport as the one we played, got physical with each other. Draymond, I get his leader, punched a young guy in the face, all that stuff. Like, they're treating him like he committed some sort of like off the field or off the court bit of, violence that would be punishable by the law. Like, I don't know, man. Like, conflict is the love language of most locker rooms, and with Draymond, it's definitely built into the model. He was certainly wrong for escalating it to that level, but I still kind of look at that and go, all right, we're probably being way too serious about this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously taking it, I don't know if it's too serious, Mike, because it's surprising. It really is surprising. It's a surprising move to go full fist with your teammate. But I am glad that there's been such a harsh overreaction. Wright Thompson from The Athletic said it perfectly, in my opinion. He said, Draymond Green abandoned his post as big bruh. As big bro, like as the big homie. Like, he had this coveted place where he could talk to anybody, be around anybody, be real, and everyone was going to just kind of take it as is. But I think the money part of it made it a little bit more spicy, where Draymond was acting outside of himself, and I do think that he knows how bad it was because he was apologetic and all those other things. But when you hear about him in the media talk about it, all he wants to talk about is how much bullshit it is that the video got leaked in the first place.
Well, that part of it is wild. And if you're the Warriors, you got to be freaking out right now because security cam footage making it to TMZ ain't the way that you want to live around there. I will maintain, I don't think any of this reaction from Draymond, from the Warriors, from everyone else is nearly as contrite as it is without the emergence of that video. I think that changed a lot. I think it's right to bring up Draymond as a leader on that team and the role he occupies as one of the veterans. Definitely, it's different than if a role player who you know has a fiery personality, if a role player version of Draymond Green popped off and did the same thing, I think it's a lot more understandable. If you look back at the history of, the annals of NBA players who were known as enforcers and stuff like that. I mean, hell, plenty of people reference Steve Kerr having flashbacks to Michael Jordan punching him in the face, which is kind of a similar operation in life. And maybe that's why I look at this situation and I'm like, all right, we don't have to treat it like it's the worst thing that ever happened. People that play a physical sport got overly hopped up on testosterone and shit talking, and one of them still off here. But, Draymond's going to be back. Again, this team's going to be fine. They're built to withstand this stuff, and all's going to be right in the world. Clearly, like you said, Jordan Poole already went out and hit a shot that's going viral around NBA Twitter last night, so he's going to be fine. Brandon, that is a very fitting and appropriate thing to bring back up as the end of this show. We didn't punch each other in the face in this podcast, and hopefully none of you want to either. If you made it through and didn't want to strike us and commit violence, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review GoJo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.